very famous hockey brothers in the case of where you have one brother who makes it in the very best leagues and one brother who has a mixed career. And what I would try to do at the beginning of the season, I know I've only got a week, but I would try and sign the lesser of the two brothers. And at the last moment, see if we can swap them over. And that's the way you can do it. That's how you get around the whole ringer situation. You're not Rod Sarich, it's clearly Corey. Prove me wrong, dude. Prove me wrong. Okay, Jonathan, time for my hypothetical, and it's very simple. The rink has been made twice as big. No other changes have been made in the game. You still have the same amount of players. You still have the same amount of teams, everything else, equipment. But just the rink is twice as big. What changes?
The views that fans have at outdoor games.
Yes.
So suddenly playing it on a baseball diamond or an NFL field, suddenly all the seats in the stands are right up close to the action. Okay, twice as big. Well, first of all, that's just 3-on-3 overtime, isn't it? Because 3-on-3 overtime, there's so much space for everybody. So if you make a current rink twice as big, so much longer and much wider, it puts more of an emphasis on your ability as a skater. Because there's more space to skate in, so you have to be able to keep up with your direct opponent. If not, they are going to beat you one-on-one. In a small rink where there's less skating space, then it's more about your ability to be a stick handler and slick passing moves to drag players out of position. It becomes much more of a skating game if you take the rink bigger. You certainly can't trap.
No.
Because there's not enough players to cover the width of the ice. So dump and chase hockey, as we know it, disappears with a rink that's twice as wide.
That's good, isn't it?
Sort of, because however, with the rink being much longer, if you have a speed advantage, then you can chip and chase and get it yourself. Because if a defenseman has a standing start and they've got to pivot and turn backwards, you're going to beat them to the end line. So it'd mean the end of sort of dumping the puck in for somebody else, but you can certainly chip and chase for your own possession back. It'll make it much harder to clear the zone, because the zone is something bigger.
Much harder.
But also less likely to be icing. So, what you'd probably see is, in that sort of situation, a team short-handed, they clear the puck down the ice, it maybe only gets as far as the opposing blue line, netminder comes out and plays a pass, rather than, limiting their play to around their crease. You can be a bit more of a sweeper keeper in power play situations. I would also suggest that having a rink twice as wide means that the typical avenues for goal scoring are the same, because you're still not going to score from on the boards, because the boards are now much further away from the goal. Your prime scoring areas don't change, but the way you access them might. It may be easier to deliver centering feeds. You've got a little bit more space to do it. Defence have to cover a wider area. There are therefore wider passing lanes. But I still think goals are scored from the same position on the ice. You make a football pitch wider, players still aren't scoring from the touchline. So I don't think it'll affect how goals are scored, but I think it'll affect the areas that assists arrive from.
Doesn't that second period line change fundamentally go crazy as well? Because your changeover is miles away now, unless you're also extending the benches by twice as much, and then you have this fantastically comical shifting of players up and down the bench.
No, I think if we go with your original idea of everything else stays the same,
right?
Then no, the players enter in neutral ice, and it's a fair few strides before they get to the red line, or they get to their own blue line.
Yeah, some line changes then are going to be very risky, especially if you're, on the wrong side of the bench that particular period, you've got a long way to go to get off the ice, and then your replacement has a long way to go to get back into your position.
Now, this is where not knowing the rules of bandy let me down, because essentially that is ice hockey, but on a sort of football-sized pitch, isn't it?
How dare you not know the rules of bandy?
I know. I need to watch. I need to watch more niche sport if that's possible.
Yes, please.
So there's probably a lot we could learn from that, but just as a sort of a tactical thing, the game is going to have to be initially slower. Because if you're playing, for example, five-a-side football, you can play at a very high tempo because you've not got far to run. But on a real football pitch, full size, you're not sprinting for 90 minutes. You're moving slowly for most of it, and then sprinting. So I think the game would slow down on a larger pitch, on a larger ice surface, just because...
Would it not resemble... Sorry, would it not resemble more Rugby Sevens? Because Rugby Sevens is played on a full-size rugby pitch. All the other rules are the same. There's just only 7 of you.
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah, because the distance between your blue line and your goalkeeper is suddenly much longer. So a breakaway, is more likely to develop if a team is defending high. So you get a lot of breakaway tries in Sevens rugby.
Yes, you do.
But also, Sevens rugby is a shorter game. They're not playing for 80 minutes.
No, that's true.
But if you were forced a Sevens rugby team to play for 80 minutes, they would be a lot more careful with the ball, and they'd make sure that when they were sprinting, they were definitely going to score. Otherwise, they're going to run out of energy too soon.
Do they not have rolling subs in Rugby Sevens?
Sort of, but not in the extent that
ice hockey does.
That hockey does, yeah, and you can change all the players all the time. You can bring some subs on.
Well, that's why I think you're actually going to keep your energy levels quite high, because you can just keep, rolling those lines. And I don't think you do full line changes anymore. You're probably doing personnel by personnel line changes.
Yeah, because if the puck's in the offensive zone, first period, it's so far for a player to go back.
Yeah, of course.
You're without a player for a considerable amount of that shift. So I'm not so sure they would. I think you would still make the line changes, but
the only reason I'm saying
you can't use the same energy on a 60-minute game on a 200-foot rink as you could in a 60-minute game on a 400-foot rink. You'd have to play slower. If you're using 100% of your energy, you've got to spread that 100% out. The game slows down. Apart from select moments when I've beaten my man, now full speed towards the goal, or full speed on this rush, we'll try and catch them out.
I'm only saying that because in speaking of niche sports, in futsal, that you do a personnel by personnel line change rather than doing full lines when you can get away with it, mainly because it's a lot less risky. But the other thing, for me, it kind of, whether it would slow the pace down, I kind of see, I can definitely say it might do, but it would probably change the very fundamental nature of the sport in terms of physicality. I think it might be the end of checking.
Well, there's certainly going to be less board play.
Yeah. And you're not going to risk an open ice hit, are you? Because, you miss that. It's a long way to go back and recover from your mistake, isn't it?
Yeah, and you'll see in Rugby Sevens, they'll pass the ball along the line, but the tacklers won't immediately rush out and engage, because if you miss your tackle, they're gone the other way. You're more likely to just sort of shuffle along the line with them, slide your defence across and keep them in front of you, and only engage them when they actually come and engage you. So defence might become a little bit more passive. You're certainly not forechecking high up the ice.
Yeah, the neutral zone trap's gone, hasn't it?
Yeah,
you're letting them come into your zone and looking for possession, aren't you?
You have to manage your energy carefully.
Yeah. Counterpoint. Let's say the opposite happens and they make the rink half the size. What does it look like, other than tiny?
Well, speed doesn't matter so much because you've not got a chance to get up to full speed. Your first couple of strides may be important, but a 100-foot rink that's only 40 feet wide is, or even less, 30 feet, I suppose, half the size. There's just no space. So it becomes much more low scoring. there is a lot of physical contact, and it's such a small offensive zone. You're just going to spend a lot of time coming back out of the zone on delayed offsides. There's no space to operate in. So essentially, the best thing to do is, well, you can shoot from anywhere, really. You're never going to be that far away from a netminder. Shoot, try and get a face-off, and try and work a set play from a face-off, because otherwise, there's just not the space. There aren't the passing lanes available to you. There's certainly no room to skate in. If you've got 10 skaters crammed into that tiny amount of space, it's just not going to work.
I'm just getting the image now of a rink that's twice as big as the one we currently have, but still having the very normal sized goals. And essentially what ice hockey becomes is a very silly version of golf.
That's it for another episode. If you have any comments about the issues we've discussed or suggestions for future hypotheticals, then tweet us at hockeyhypo and make sure you leave us a comment and rating wherever you're listening from. On behalf of Stephen Dowson, this is Jonathan Fernley saying goodbye.